So this is a bit of a crazy story, but suiting for a crazy ex-wife and the crazy things she did to me. It's long, so I apologize for that. So this is how it all started. I was a young airman in the USAF. I had a solid career, surprisingly a AFSC, Air Force Specialty Code, essentially my job code, that was listed as deployed in location. So I couldn't be deployed, and I worked 8 to 12 hours 5 days a week. Guess that's what you get when you work on nukes for a living, LOL. But I digress. I met my now ex-wife in the city that I was stationed. Everything went great, and we started dating, eventually getting engaged. A month or so before the wedding, my best friend, a guy who was in basic training with me and was my wingman, was stationed at my base for training. Though sweet, I introduced him to my soon-to-be wife, but you can see where this is going, LOL, and we all hung out fairly frequently. My former best friend was married at that time. Keep that in mind for later. When my wedding came around, he was my best man. We had a great time, continuing to hang out and enjoy his time stationed at the base. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. My wife had been having unexplained seizures frequently. No doctor or specialist in the state could come up with any explanation for them. Eventually, one doctor asked me in private if I had considered that it could be self-induced from a mental condition. I had not, but just let that become a normal part of life. Time continued, and we started attending a local church, great place. But here's where I first thought she was legitimately crazy. The first day at the church, we sat in the front pew. Her friend's father was the head pastor, and the pastor that was at our wedding was from there. She went full demonic possession in the front pew of that Baptist church. I will repeat, full demonic possession in the front pew of a Baptist church. No joke. At one point, she had tried to bite at my throat. You could hear her jaw snap down like a dog. That's when I knew. Maybe I rushed into things because obviously something wasn't right. Around this time, she had started to go out drinking more and more, distancing herself from me, and spending a whole lot of time with my best man. I initially wrote it off but had my suspicions. One day, she had asked me to check her phone to see who had called. I also saw a fairly lewd message from a number that I knew, but the name in the contacts wasn't the same as whose number I knew it was. It was my best man. So I calmly confronted her about it, offered to talk it out, and work through whatever needed to be worked out. Go to marriage counseling. Anything. While I had every reason to leave at this point, I took my vows seriously, and I take marriage seriously. I tried to make it work until I signed those divorce papers. Now I had discussed what was going on with one of my close friends in my squadron. He in turn went and told our first sergeant. He called me in and asked me about the affair. Now before I get into this next part, understand that an affair in the military is a different beast. It's against military law. You can be anything from demoted to discharged to even arrested for it, and my best man had not only been having an affair with my wife, but he was also still married himself. Double whammy. When my first sergeant confronted me, I laid out the situation but made it very clear that I wanted there to be no repercussions for my best man, not have his command notified. It would be detrimental to his career, and while he did me dirty, he is not a terrible person. I didn't want to see him lose his career over this girl. She was not worth it. Well, needless to say, my first sergeant didn't listen to my request. His command was notified, and they put a restraining order against him and my wife, and him and myself. My wife was furious to say the least and put all of the blame on me. She tried to justify his interactions by making outlandish accusations about me, that I had been drinking and was abusing her. Now let me make this clear. I hadn't drank in about 2.5 years at this time and would never lay a hand on a woman, let alone my wife. Needless to say, the military took her side and they put yet another restraining order between her and I. I was forced to move out of the home and stay on the other side of base. They eventually took her side even further and sent me to a rehab center in a separate state for my non-existent alcohol problem. For days into being at the rehab center, the center had called my command and told them that I had no issue with alcohol and no problem with any sort of addiction and requested for me to be sent back as I would gain nothing from being there. My command disagreed and forced them to keep me for a month. Let me tell you, being forced to attend AA meetings while not being an alcoholic or an addict is a very awkward situation for everyone involved. They eventually changed things so I didn't have to attend those meetings or anything of the sort. I returned a month later, and my command had scheduled an appointment to see if they would keep the restraining order or to relinquish it. My wife and I were both in attendance, and the woman handling our case was very nice if you ask me. My wife, on the other hand, got into a very heated argument with this woman. She requested for my wife to leave the room, and what she said made me break out in laughter. I'm not going to relinquish this restraining order. Not because I believe you are a danger to your wife. I apologize. Those original accusations were incorrect. But I do believe that she is a danger to you. So I cannot in good conscience lift the restraining order. Not long after that, my wife had moved out of the house back to her mother's house. While we were waiting for the divorce to go through and papers to be signed. After I signed the divorce papers, she told me in the parking lot that she was pregnant with his kid and that she hated me. At this point, I stopped caring whatsoever. In the following month, she had started dating my best man, racked up $30,000 in credit card debt on my credit cards, and made accusations that I was having my own affair with a woman back home who I had been good friends with. I hadn't spoken to that woman in over a year, but okay. Makes sense, right? So her and I went our separate ways. My military career was essentially shot due to a certification I had to hold being suspended due to the messy divorce. It's a reliability certification. Remember, I worked on nuclear weapons. Gotta be 110%. I chose to leave the military and get a start on my life. I later found out that my ex-wife had married my best man. Oh, and did I mention her seizures magically stopped after the divorce? The part that hurt me the most, she took my German Shepherd mix, Riley. Now here's the fun part where karma kicks in. I can happily say the woman my ex-wife accused me of having an affair with is now my girlfriend. She is the most amazing and beautiful woman I've ever been blessed to have in my life. That being said, an old friend of mine was still friends with my ex-wife, and my ex-wife would vent about her marriage issues too. Come to find out, she had an affair on her beloved new husband, my best man. I have the messages from her to my friend to prove it. So I feel he should know. But this isn't my place to decide now. I'm not in the business of ruining marriages. So I simply let 3 of my most trusted brothers from our basic training flight that knew my best man and I both know the situation. They have the messages, and it is now up to them to decide if they let their brother know what is happening. I'll let everyone know if they do, because I know I'll hear about it, lol. And lastly, darling, if you're reading this, we know what you did. We have the proof. We have the messages. It's up to the guys now. Stop being so terrible. It's not good for your health.